Well,
It
we're
doesn't
starting
happen very often,
here.
though, I must say.
Really?
As often as I'm at the airport, it rarely ever, and it hardly ever happens off Horizon.
Wow. Glad you can make
Usually
it.
it's
Somewhere
weather,
and off
usually it's
there.
weather for Horizon. No, it's just mechanical.
Oh.
But they didn't have another plane.
See.
When you get
You can have some
collisions during rush
opportunities.
hour,
Yeah.
there aren't any other planes to pull anymore. So
Wow.
at any rate, it was no big deal.
I know.
Thanks for
It's interesting flying into a storm. Coming out of nowhere, I guess. So we're going to go ahead and get started here so we can wrap this up as quickly as possible. My name is Bill Van Streeburg. I'm account manager for Philips Healthcare. This morning we're going to talk about the Respironics V60, which is the replacement for the BiPAP Vision. The BiPAP Vision, which has been around for about 12 plus years now, is going to be discontinued next July. And this will be the new platform going forward. So this will be around hopefully for a long time as well. So this morning is going to be a little bit different than we normally do for a presentation. I'm going to go show you more of the intricacies about it. I'm assuming all of you have a base knowledge of visions that you've used for probably quite some time. Is there anybody that has not used the BiPAP Vision? Okay. Feel free to stop me and ask questions at any point through this. And if you need me to run over anything again or go more in depth, just let me know. So as you can see, the V60 is quite a departure from the Vision, although the face and the internal components and everything, the stand, everything is new and up to date. The thought process and the functionality of the unit remains the same. It still treats the same patient groups. We've expanded that a little bit now. We include pediatrics, so we go down to 20 kilograms. In August, we will be releasing software that takes it down to 5 kilograms. And we will be releasing masks accordingly for pediatrics and infants when we get the parts of the software released. So for right now, it's just 20 kilograms. This is also a fully transportable system, unlike the Vision. This has an onboard battery over here on the right-hand side of the unit, or left-hand side if you're looking at it. There's a 6-hour battery on a full charge inside. this is a lithium-ion battery with smart battery technology. It's very similar to the battery that's in your cell phone. It's a demand-use battery. So there is an hour and minute indicator on the screen that I'll show you in a few minutes that will tell you how many hours and minutes are left on the battery at the current demand of the patient. If that demand increases or decreases, that time will fluctuate. Okay. And also a reminder, if this should become disconnected, or if you take it off the patient, you may see the battery time drop really fast. When you put it back on, you'll see it start to creep up. That's that demand on the battery that's occurring, and so the battery is trying to adjust to give you the optimal time that you have. When you get down below an hour, it starts giving you friendly reminders that your battery is getting low. When you get below a half hour, it starts to be a little less friendly. And when you get down below 15 minutes, it really gets annoying.
So do we need to
plug it
keep
in.
these plugged in?
No, on a full charge, it will, if it just sits in a closet, a full charge, it will last about 9 months before it's dead. If the battery does run dead, you can plug it in and use it at the same time. It will charge and be functional. Okay, so it doesn't require being charged in. I would leave it charged in while it's on the patient, because it'll keep it fully charged in case you need to transport somebody. But in a storeroom, you don't need to worry about fighting for plugs, because I know plugs can sometimes be a premium in some storerooms. Part of the fully transport system is we have oxygen cylinders that are mounted on these cylinder brackets right here. There's 2 oxygen tanks that can be mounted. This is a manifold kit right back here. These 2 outside O2 hoses, one goes to each side and attaches to a 50 psi outlet on the O2 cylinder, and then the middle one here is the one that goes to the wall. Okay. I always suggest, because these regulators get worn after time and they sometimes can get loose and leak, is to keep the tanks off when it's just sitting in a room, and just turn them on before you transport. That's the only thing I recommend. You don't have to do it, but regulators get old and they leak, and you don't want to run out of oxygen when you're ready to transport somebody. This, however, will automatically revert to tank flow from wall flow in reverse when you unplug it from the wall. So when you disconnect it from the wall, the flow will automatically start pulling from the tanks. And when you plug it back into the wall, it will shut the tanks off, and it will start working off the wall instead. Okay, so you don't have to do anything else. But I do recommend, if it's not going to be used for a period of time as a transport, to just turn the tanks off at the head unit. On the back right here, we have a inlet filter right here. This is just a fan filter. It's a sponge filter. Probably need to wash it, every few months. Just keep a notice on it. If it gets dusty, just pop this little. These are not screws actually right here. I know it's a little deceiving, but these are not. You just take a little, a scissor or something, just pop a little plastic piece out right there, and the sponge right behind it. Just wash it, let it air dry, and then you stick it back on right here. Over here on this side compartment right here, there's a little screw that drops down, that pushes up and twists. It's hard to show down here. So you just untwist it, it drops down. This panel comes off, there's a filter right here. This is a disposable filter right here. This is the air inlet filter right here. So you just take a look at this, probably changed about every 3 to 4 months or so. Much like a car filter, if it looks dirty, change it. If it doesn't look dirty, you don't have to change it. And it just pops in just like that. That's really the only other maintenance that you have to do on the unit other than just wiping it down in between use. On the back right here, this is a data communications capable system, so it can be plugged into a capsule and download information into a charting system, such as your current settings and stuff like that, depending on what you are set up to receive. There's also a nurse call adapter back here. There's a USB port, and there's an RS-232 cable right here. Okay.
Does this talk the same formatting as our computer system, or booms that you would connect it?
Well, its code is written that comes to the port right here. Depending on what you have on your side, there's a system called Capsule, and Capsule takes in all these different machines that talk differently, converts it into the format that is readable by whatever system you're using. So it would be, most ventilators are run on the old Puritan Bennett 7200 code, which is what this is run on because it's so prevalent in the system. And so this will download everything that a ventilator is set up to download. So there are some things that it doesn't take, such as IPAP and EPAP. It will convert to PEEP when it transmits it over. But the company that handles your electronic medical records can, or your charting systems, I should say, can add the code to accept this. But it's all written right here. It's just a matter of them doing their part to accept it. Yeah. So as time moves on, that will start to become more prevalent. This is new in the market, and so of course all those companies, there's going to be catch-up time with that. Any questions about the outside of the unit right here? Okay, this is a touch screen LCD full color. We move the power button from the back to the front, and although this is a touch screen right here, you see this little pad right here. This is similar to the pad on your iPad. It's a touch pad. It does the same thing that I'm going to do down here. I'm just not going to use it. But if you want to make a change, you can turn this either way to increase or decrease your value. And this check mark is the same as the accept key down here. So if you're wondering what this is, I won't be touching it during the course of the presentation. To turn the system on, you just press the power button right here. It does about a 3-second self-test, and then it's ready to go. Okay, there's no exhalation port test needed if you're using Respironics mask. If you're using another mask, what mask are you using here? Yours is FP, right?
Yeah, we have your Respironics, and then we also have
Well, are they vented or non-vented?
The ResMed are vented.
The ResMeds are vented. Then you do have to do the exhalation port test on that, and I'll show you how to do that when we get to it. So when you first turn it on, you're going to see this. In fact, if you don't have it plugged in, you're going to see this little yellow bar right here that says running on internal battery. It's just a reminder to tell you that you're running on the internal battery. Down here, it's going to tell you what mask and which circuit you're using. It's based on whatever the last patient was on, which you're going to see right here. It's a little bit of a split screen right here. You can get rid of this split screen just by pressing the priority alarm, the information bar up here. You can reset the alarm by pressing the alarm reset button right here. It'll turn blue. This will get you your full waveforms right here. Over here on this side is the alarm silence button right here. You can press this, it activates the alarm for 2 minutes. You can press it as many times as you want to, and it'll reset to 2 minutes. Okay. On this information button right here, you'll have the 2 eyes that are here, which are just information only. If a yellow alarm occurs, it will appear here, and there will be a low audible alarm. If a high priority alarm, which is red, appears here, it will be a high audible alarm. They go in the order of the most recent and the highest priority. Okay, so you may see stacks of them here if something crazy went on, and the most recent one will be on top. And then we'll stay in this screen with these alarms here until you reset it. Okay, so when you would just reset it to get rid of all of them, and just press this information message button to bring it back to a full waveform right here. Okay. The system is set up into 3 different sections right here. So you have your patient data right here, your waveforms right here, and down here is where you do all your data entry. So up here, this is pretty much the same as it is on the Vision, with the exception we added an XL minute ventilation value right here. Okay, so that's the only difference up here. Everything else is the same. Does anybody have any questions about these values? Everybody familiar with them, what they do? Okay. Over here we have a little bar right here that distinguishes between our timed breath, our spontaneous breath, and our exhaled breath. So exhaled is blue, a orange is a timed breath, and the spontaneous breath is teal. Okay? And you'll see those down here on the waveforms right here. Okay? So it's very visible, so you can see it across the room what's going on. You can switch from what the patient is doing to what the ventilator is doing, you know, how much effort the patient is making just by glancing over it. In the middle right here, the waveforms are all scalable.
Can I back you up real quick? On the rate, if you're in a spontaneous time, will the rate kick in or automatically, or will it only kick in if the patient stops breathing?
The rate will kick in if the patient's spontaneous rate exceeds the time difference between the set rate. So if my set rate is at 10, and that means a breath every 6 seconds, if my patient's spontaneous rate goes beyond that 6-second interval, the machine will deliver a breath.
Okay.
If the patient takes a breath on second 5, it resets. If the patient can't stack breaths either. The ventilator will not stack a breath on top of a breath that's already been delivered. So it has to go beyond that. So with the set rates, it really should be set to a minimum minute ventilation for that patient based on their tidal volume, because you don't want the ventilator to start overworking the patient. So really the set rate as a backup rate shouldn't really ever be more than 10, because you want your patient to do most of the work, and 12 to 16, you know, about average for some people, you know. So, but yeah, it won't kick in until after that time period elapses. So down here in the waveforms, you have your pressure, flow, and volume. You can pause this waveform by pressing the pause button right here. This little gray bar will scroll off the screen, and a red bar will appear. Your values will be displayed over here for that moment in time. You can touch the red and drag it to anywhere you want to, and it will display the values at that particular time. Okay? To press the play button to start it again, just press that button over there once more, and it will continue on its merry way. Down here, you can change the time interval from 3, 6, 12 to 24 seconds by pressing this button right here. Okay, that's pretty much it on the waveforms. Down here is where you're going to be doing most of your activities, where you do all your changes, and this is where all your current settings are displayed. So I also can tell what mode I'm in because it says ST settings down here. So my active mode is the spontaneous timed mode, and also in this little gray area right here it says active mode is the ST mode as well. So down here, to make a change, obviously I've already started pressing buttons. So to make a change, you would just touch the button that you're going to make the change on. There's only one submenu on each one of these buttons. In the submenu screen for each value that you're going to change, your current settings are always displayed down below. On every screen, your minimum and your maximum values for that particular setting that you're working with is also displayed. You also have, in this particular screen, in the EPAP screen, you have your pressure support over here, and you have these EPAP and IPAP flags right here. And what these flags are is just kind of give you a visual of where you were at on the scale, and the active flag is the longer tail. So I have the IPAP as the active flag right now, and this little EPAP over here is in red. And it's in red because that's telling me where my minimum IPAP can be. Okay, so if I go down to EPAP, then I'm going to end up with CPAP. So if I try to make a change here, and I drop this below EPAP, another thing's going to happen too. The button's going to disappear. If this value is set above 4, 4 is the minimum EPAP you can have on this, like the Vision, there would be a little sentence right here that says you have to decrease your EPAP in order to decrease your IPAP. So at no time can you go into a negative ventilation mode, okay? To hit accept, you press accept. Cancel, if you want to go back out, you hit cancel, okay? Here's my EPAP value. Again, my active flag is the EPAP. If I do try to take it past that IPAP, there's that little information message right there that says I need to change my IPAP in order to increase my EPAP, okay? So there's some safety features built into the system now. Also, over here you have this little, let me back this down a little bit. Also over here you have this little gradient right here. This is basically just for people so that they understand where pressure support comes from on a non-invasive ventilator. Okay, it's the difference between EPAP and IPAP. So this little gradient right here, you'll notice it drops down and rises up. It's just kind of drive home. It's mostly for newer people or people that don't use the system very often, just a reminder of where we get this value from. As always, I've been playing with this. If I want to remember what my IPAP set or my EPAP setting was, it's 4. I can look down here and I can go back down to 4, or I can just hit cancel and it will go back to the same value. Now, one thing you did notice when we were in these screens, when I was changing these values, nothing actually happened on the ventilator. That's a change from the vision that you'll have to remember since you'll be working with both ventilators. On the vision, when you make a change, it's immediate on the very next breath, be it spontaneous or time. On the V60, it's not. It's similar to a ventilator. No changes are actually active until you hit the accept button, okay? So if I make a change here and I hit accept, then the next breath will be that new setting, okay? Any questions so far on the EPAP, IPAP? Other than that, it's basically the same thought process as the vision, same things you would make changes for. Over here you have your rate and your I time. Again, the rate and the I time are only active in a timed breath. They're not functional in a spontaneous breath because the patient is in charge of their own rate and I time. So when you go into these sub-menu screens, on the rate and the I time, you'll have your IE ratio displayed over here. So if I make a change, you'll see my IE ratio just changes right there. You also have your flags right here. There's rate, and then there's a 1-to-1 flag right here. So if I try to go above this 1-to-1 right here, it takes the button away. So that's that safety feature again, okay? The same thing with the I time, except it's reversed, and you get the same value displays right here as your IE ratio. Over here is rise. You're familiar with rise time on the vision. This is the same thing. We just took away the time factor of it because a lot of people got confused between rise time and I time because they both have time, and people were like, why are there 2 different times on the same machine? So we just got rid of rise because the most important factor in rise is how fast you go from EPAP to IPAP, not necessarily the time that it takes to do that. You just need to know it goes faster or slower depending on what you need it to be. So in rise, we changed the time value of 0.02, 0.05, 0.2, 0.4, 0.1, whatever it is. And we changed it to a 1 to 5. Okay, so 3 is about average. Change it to a 1 or a 2 is a faster rise from EPAP to IPAP. And you can see that displayed up here on the waveforms right here. See how it's kind of very squared off right here. If I go into rise and it changes to a 5, we're typing. You see how it's really elongated out right there, okay? So a rise time of a 1 or 2 would be good for somebody that's on a high respiratory rate or a COPD or something like that where they need, the ventilator really needs to keep up with them. A 4 or 5 would be good for somebody that's asthmatic or constricted airway where they need more time to get to their IPAP pressure so they can stay there longer. As patients start to settle down, their rates start to settle down, their breathing pattern starts to become more stable, they're probably going to tell you the air is coming too fast or too slow, similar to what they might do on the vision. That's a good indication. You probably can just put it back to 3. That's about the average for most of them. Over here, are you all familiar with ramp on the home care machines? Works the same exact way. You can set a time from 5 to 45 minutes, and the ventilator will start at a preset, predetermined lower IPAP and EPAP pressures, and then over that period of time, it will work its way up to your set pressures. Okay, you can't set the starting pressures. You just set the time, and the ventilator will determine what the beginning pressures are going to be. Okay, so I can set this like 25 minutes. I don't recommend this in an ED situation, but in a post-op situation or a frequent flyer where you know you're going to be starting on higher pressures but they don't tolerate it, or if they're on night ventilation only, where they may need some time before they get used to the higher flows, then this might be a good option for you. When I started, it will drop down to, I think it was 12/4 right now. I have my EPAP on my minimum setting, so you can see the blower already wound down. If you come back a few minutes later and you find your patient is not, keeping up with the volume on that right there, you can always go into the ramp, hit end ramp, and then the very next breath will be at their set pressure, so you can always override it. Okay. Down here is the FiO2. FiO2s are now 21 to 100 in 1% increments. Okay, the vision is 5% increments above 25. This is in 1% increments. You can choose whether to share that with other people or not. I would just stick to the 5% rules. I'm not used to it. Don't let docs start thinking that 1% is available now. Over here on the alarm setting right here, we have, I should ask, are there any more questions on the ST? Pretty much like the vision, the only difference is the rise and the ramp we've added now. Okay. Over here on the alarm settings, you have the same high rate, low rate, high tidal volume, low tidal volume, high pressure, low pressure. We did add a low exhaled minute ventilation alarm right here, and we did do away with the apnea alarm. Okay, so we no longer have an apnea alarm, but we do have a low exhaled minute ventilation. And then we have the low inspiratory pressure timed alarms. Everybody familiar? That's the same as on the vision. So you can basically set a time, and then the ventilator, if somebody has a coughing fit or something, it'll delay alarm activation for that time set to see if the situation resolves itself. If it doesn't after that period of time, then alarm will sound. It's basically try to avoid some nuisance alarms. Down here is that little battery with the hour and minute indicator I showed you. So right now, this battery is fully charged, and so it has 7 hours and 40 minutes left on it right now at current usage right now. On these new ventilators for about the first year, you're going to see the full charge go above the 6-hour mark. The 6 hours are minimum threshold on a full charge. After a couple years, you probably start seeing it max out at about 6 hours. We anticipate the batteries should last about 5 to 7 years, but we don't know how long they will last. They could go beyond that. We're not quite sure. So it depends. The batteries exceeded our expectation from the manufacturer. We get them from the timing that we were able to get it on. So, oh, and I should mention, from a dead battery, it takes about 4 hours to get to a full charge, and that's being used at the same time.
On the battery, do we need to let it discharge all the way before recharging it?
No, you don't have to. Over here is our modes. We have the CPAP mode that we had on the Vision, but we did add a ramp here. We also did add C-Flex as well. Familiar with C-Flex? C-Flex basically drops a portion of the pressure out at the beginning of the expiratory phase to allow the patients to exhale easier, and then it ramps back up so that the pressure is there at the beginning of the inspiratory phase. It's on probably about 98% of home care machines. What I tell therapists to do is, if you use this as a $12,000 home CPAP machine, if you put this on a patient and they start breathing and they say, I can't breathe out like I can at home, that's too difficult, then they're on C-Flex. If they don't say anything to you, don't even mention it. You're going down a road that you don't want to go down, okay? C-Flex, there are basically 4 options: off, 1, 2, or 3. It's basically a comfort factor, so you can ask the patient which feels better, 1, 2, or 3. And 1 is a gradual drop, 2 is a little bit more, and 3 is the lowest drop that you can. Almost everybody is going to say 3 because that's the easiest, and that's the farthest drop, So, but it's basically just a comfort. So if nobody says anything, then don't even bring it up. And then you have your dial-in FiO2 right here. So if you do have a patient that comes in that's on a home care machine and the doc does order a higher FiO2, at least you have an ability to do that. Over here, we also added 2 new modes to the V60. They're not new as far as you all are concerned, but they're new and non-invasive here. We added pressure control ventilation now. So now when you set the eye time here and you activate pressure control ventilation, I set the eye time at 1. And then when I activate this, every single breath will be 1.05 seconds, whether it's a spontaneous breath or a mechanical breath. Okay, so the patient is no longer in control of their eye time. The ventilator is in control of the eye time. So on an intubated patient, if this is on a trach or a patient on ET tube, that may be okay because you have more control of the airway. But on a mask patient, that's going to become very uncomfortable because we don't breathe and set eye times. And so in the goal of spontaneous on mask patients is for them to do the work, not the ventilator to do the work. So that might be a bit uncomfortable. So really the pressure control ventilation is on here for more use on an intubated patient, not necessarily a mask patient. We have, for a mask patient and an intubated patient, we have also another mode called AVAPS. AVAPS is very popular in the home care market for neuromuscular patients, patients with deteriorating lung compliance who cannot maintain a consistent tidal volume over a period of time. So what we try to do is we try to stabilize that and provide a more consistent tidal volume so that their respiratory drive doesn't weaken all the time, so it's more stable for them to breathe, it's easier for them. So AVAPS, which stands for Average Volume Assured Pressure Support, basically what we do is we set a target tidal volume, we set a minimum and a maximum IPAP pressure, and then we allow the ventilator to fluctuate the pressure and the flow to help the patient achieve that targeted tidal volume. Now we say targeted tidal volume because this is intended for spontaneously breathing patients, so we don't want to control the tidal volume, we want them to still do their own breathing, we just want to supplement it. Okay, so what it basically does on a breath-by-breath basis, it's going to ensure that the flow, the pressure at least gets to my minimum IPAP pressure setting here, which is 14, or a pressure support of 10. And then it's going to look over every 60-second period, and it's going to check to see what this tidal volume is. If this tidal volume is plus or minus 15%, then the pressure is going to stay the same. If this starts to drop down, then the pressure is going to start to increase, which will increase the flow to get that tidal volume back up. Okay, so this may not work very well because we're already at 445, but when I activate this right now, everything pretty much is going to stay the same as I had it on my ST mode. But if I, let's see if I can push this up a little bit. I don't know how much this test one can stand, but let's just do 600, see if it'll go that high. I don't know if it will or not, but test one's not the best use example for this. But at any rate, I'll let this run for a couple of minutes. So basically what this right here is would not be recommended for in the ED or an initial start on a patient. Where this really does well is on a long-term patient where they're getting end of life or you're having more issues or neuromuscular. This has also become very popular in post-recovery when patients are extubated and placed on non-invasive ventilation. You can place them on this. Use the ST settings to determine where your IPAP baseline pressure is for the tidal volume you want to deliver to that patient, and then you can switch them over to the AVAPS mode and let the ventilator monitor the flow and the pressure to the patient. Because when patients first come out of surgery and they're in recovery, they're snowed under, and so they need more work by the ventilator because they're not doing any work on their own. As they start to wake up, they're going to take over their respiratory drive, and so there's less demand placed on the ventilator because they're doing more of the work. So in the beginning, the patient will receive a higher flow or a higher pressure because the ventilator has to maintain most of the work, and as they wake up, their efforts will increase, and so the ventilator's efforts will decrease. So by the time the patient is fully awake, the ventilator is at its minimum values, and the patient is doing all of the work. So, and you can monitor that by looking at the patient triggering here and looking at the tidal volume and seeing where it's going. If this is at 0, like this right here, your patient's not doing any work whatsoever. If this is at 100%, then your patient's doing all of the work. Okay, so they're probably ready to come off. Right now, if you do a vision in a post-recovery situation, you have to constantly keep going up and changing the IPAP settings to adjust the flow in order to meet the patient's demand. With the V60, you don't have to do that because the ventilator will adjust that flow off for you. Okay, and it does. It's a very, very gradual. So this is why we say don't use it in a more rapid changing situation because it's over a 60-second period of time. You're not going to see rapid fluctuations in flow. And we do that because we don't want to startle these patients, and we don't want them. We don't want the ventilator to suddenly become the main mode of ventilation. We want the patient to maintain their own drive. So if you're looking for this to make rapid changes, it does not do that. Okay, so AVAPS we strongly recommend for that type of situation, post-recovery. People have also started to use this as a backup ventilation mode also, because they know that if they have a patient where they don't know if they can sustain their own volumes for a longer period of time, you can put them in AVAPS and it will help do that. So we've started to increase. Our pressures are at 18 now. We've gotten our tidal volume up to about 565, so it's probably going to hover about right there for right now. So it will stay like this, and if my patient starts to wake up and this starts to go up, this will start to drop back down again. So that's a good example right there of what it does. Okay? Any questions on the AVAPS mode? I'll send a PowerPoint that's real simple, that kind of shows you a chart of what it does look like, and you'll get a better understanding. But
Sounds like PRVC in a way.
it's like on an 840, it's like VC plus, similar to that. It's similar to PRVC. There's some differences
Yeah.
because we're monitoring flow and pressure at the same time. But the thought process is all the same, stabilizing the flow on the long run.
It's kind of like VPAP off of the rest med is what it is.
Yeah, so it's.
What did you say, Owen?
It's like VPAP off the rest med. You
Yeah.
know, where you're sitting them in a max and you let the time
That
run.
sounds like
Well,
Viato.
I mean, it's the exact same AVAPS and they're the same thing on the home care side, ResMed and Respironics, it's the same basic technology. AVAPS, I mean, and on the home care side, these are standalone machines that people are on, similar to like the ResMed machines, the same, they're specialty machines that do nothing but this all the time. So that's basically it for the modes. The active mode, it's got a blue button on it. So you do have the ability to go in when you're in an active mode and make changes, in multiple changes if you need to a patient, and then activate them all at the same time. So you don't have to keep change, because every time you make a change and you activate it, enter it, the patient's going to feel that change. So if you just want, if you have like 3 or 4 changes you need to do, you can change them all and then tell the patient, okay, I'm going to press the enter button here when I do. The next breath is going to feel a little different than the one you got before, so don't panic, okay? Just a few extra things here. Housekeeping, basically, you can control the brightness and the loudness. Here, brightness is at its maximum right here. You can dim it down. Loudness, the 5 right here is about the loudness of a vision. This will go up to 10, which is about twice as loud as a vision. So I'm not going to do that one. Bin information over here just kind of tells you what, if you have to call it in for service, they may say what's the serial number, what's the hours, what software setting are you on right here. And then screen lock, you can hit the screen lock button right here, and it basically takes these buttons, active buttons away right here. But you can touch this and it'll tell you how to unlock it, which basically you just press the check key to unlock it.
It's really nice if you put on and off switch on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. No need for a
Because
plastic
you're not
screen anymore.
Trying to
Yeah.
do that.
Over here, mask port selection right here. This is where you choose what mask you're on. On the Respironics mask, you'll see a number on the elbow. All full face masks and nasal masks are number 1. 2 is the Performax mask. That's the larger mask that goes over the face right here. 3 will be where the pediatric masks will go, and 4 is that old big Jason helmet that we used to have. There's also ET trach button over here. Basically, this is just for flow accuracy and tidal volume accuracy for your patient. There's not a lot of differences between these masks, obviously, but we're just, accuracy. Everybody's hell bent on accuracy, and so we try to be as accurate as possible. So what we did was we took the algorithms for the intentional leaks in our mask and we put them in the ventilator. So now instead of doing the exhalation port test to determine the flow, the ventilator does it for you. Okay, so it does it automatically. This ET trach option right here, if you have an intubated patient, basically just tells the system not to look for a patient leak over here or a leak of maybe 1 or 2 at the most if you have a leaky cuff or something like that. But there shouldn't be a higher value right here. It's just for flow accuracy. Okay, a 1 right here. You said a 1. There's a 2, a 3, a 4, and other. Other is what you would use for your ResMed vented mask. Okay, so you shouldn't be using a circuit with an exhalation port test. You probably take that out and use the vented mask, I'm assuming. If not, you should be. Because we only want leak in one place, one or the other, not in both. Otherwise, the leak is going to be too high. The leak compensation on this is the same as it is on the Vision, 60 liters per minute. The optimal leak is 5 to 25 liters, the same as it was on the Vision, so there's no difference there. So you just choose your mask you want, press other. Over here, you'll usually have a circuit with an exhalation port on it, or you'll have a circuit that does not have one. If you try to use a non-vented mask, which is a Respironics mask, with a circuit without an exhalation port test in it, exhalation port built into it, it won't allow you to do that. Okay? When you hit back, it takes you back and it says choose another mask. If you're using a circuit that doesn't allow for that, then choose that. Okay? if you make a mistake, like if you go, and it remembers from patient to patient what your last setting was. So if you're using the same mask in one patient and another, you don't have to reset this each time. So if you're using a vented mask, and the next patient you put it on is a vented mask also, you don't have to mess with this right here. Is anything tragic going to happen if you don't do this? No. It's just, again, it's for flow and tidal volume accuracy. The biggest variables that you're going to see are between the vented mask and the non-vented mask is where you're going to see the leak. That's where I would recommend that you make sure you have the most accurate settings. This PEV right here is plateau exhalation valve. That's a European valve. It's a double exhalation valve that they use over there, so you don't have to worry about that one at all. Whisper swivel, that's in there because we still have hospitals that insert whisper swivels into circuits to use them. Basically is the same as the DEP, and I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I think that's going to probably go away. The standby feature right here, this is important because this is different than it is on the Vision. On the Vision, when I push standby, the ventilator immediately goes into standby. You'll notice when I push standby here, it did not go into the standby mode. That's because the ventilator requires that you disconnect it from the patient. Until it senses there is no resistance to flow, it will not go into standby mode. So until I take it off, now it will go into standby mode. It's also much smarter than the Vision. It knows that I'm doing this, okay? So it doesn't go activate again, all right? So it's much nicer when we say, push the Vision over in the corner, let it sit there. Well, that's nice in theory, but as soon as you shut the door, the ventilator pops back on.
Turn off the lights.
So yeah, turn off the lights, move slightly, whatever you do. They got a little carried away with the sensitivity on that one. So this time they went to the opposite end, so it worked out well. So now when I put it back on, and then the patient takes a breath, or the ventilator triggers a breath, then it will go back into mode. If I press the standby button and I forget and I leave the room and I'm down the hall and coffee is more important than the patient, then I can say, oh, I forgot to take it out of standby mode. No worries, it has a 60-second timer over here. When it gets down to 0, it will cancel out and it will just go back to it on the regular screen that it was on right there. So you can't put a patient in standby mode while they're on circuit. Now that's different than a disconnect alarm. The disconnect alarm, if the patient becomes disconnected from the ventilator, that is this alarm right here, that will go off right here, and then that's the 10 right there. It's quite loud. So I strongly don't recommend using that in ICU.
Telly, they needed it.
You'll see right here,
The further you move away from the nursing station, I think we should just progressively increase the alarm.
5, 6,
Yeah.
7,
Right,
8,
we'll just
9,
put little
10.
numbers above the door so you know.
Here's a red activate alarm right here. When the alarm cancels itself, it draws a line through it right here, but it doesn't go away. You'll see that everything right here. It's also telling me I'm running on a battery right here. I can reset it. It goes away, and then just get rid of that right there. This little question mark over here just kind of tells you what these are right here. Some informational messages right here. You'll notice that disconnect took about an hour off my time right here. But now that once the battery determines that flow is stable, it'll start to increase. It already jumped from 627 to 651. It'll start to go back up to where it should be. So, and again, the important thing with the battery is keep it plugged in while you're on a patient just to make sure it's fully charged. It doesn't have to be plugged in between use in the storeroom to keep it charged. It takes about 9 months to run a battery dead. It takes about 4 hours to charge a dead battery, but you can use it and charge it at the same time. So if it does go dead, you plug it in, it's immediately available for use. To turn it off, you just press the power button here and press ventilator shutdown right here. So one big thing on this right here, unlike the Vision, everything is a two-step process like your ventilators are, whereas the Vision, it's a one-step process. This is the heater bracket down here. There's a wrap right there for the power cord for the heater so it doesn't drag on the floor, a little basket in the back. And then there's a little information help guide right here. Any questions?
Does the FiO2 setting affect the inspiratory flow offered to the patient at all?
Yes, like the Vision, there is a diminishing flow the higher the FiO2,
Okay.
although with the V60, our minimum flow rate now is about 185, whereas our minimum flow rate on the Vision is about 160. So we're high at 100% FiO2. We bottom out at about 180, 185, right around there. So we're still far in excess of what most people will use. So, but there is that diminishing return. One thing I should note on a transport that reminds me of a good thought. If you're going to transport a patient on this, these are two cylinders of oxygen right here. They're not attached to a wall when you're transporting, so there's not a limitless supply of oxygen. If you are transporting a patient on a high flow at 100% FiO2, you're probably going to get down to the elevator and you're going to start running out of oxygen. 100% FiO2 is a lot of oxygen consumption. You'll get about 30 to 35 minutes on 2 tanks at about 50% or less. So if you're going to transport a patient, you really should recommend, I do strongly recommend you use an FiO2 of less than 50%. So I wouldn't transport patients on 100% oxygen. Okay.
Does it automatically run off one tank and then that's?
No, it bleeds both tanks
at the
equally.
same
If
time?
you have 2 tanks that have variable levels, it will bleed at the same rate, and then when one runs out, the other one will double down. And then when they both run out, your FiO2 alarm will sound, but in most of the non-invasive situations, flow is more priority than FiO2. You can go a few minutes on room air as long as they're getting sufficient flow. So if you run out during transport, just get to where you're going, but don't panic on it. It's still, your patient's getting flow. It still beats bagging.
Or non-rebreather.
Yeah, or a non-rebreather. Still much better than a non-rebreather. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's awesome.
I think so.
Come on, Grandpa.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. And when will we start?
As soon as we set up a training table for final check. In the next 2 weeks. Yeah. You want to do one?
Yeah.
More I actually have. The easier to check off goes for everybody. So.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.